Affordability has been a defining issue in this year's mayoral campaigns, and in many ways, the complicated conversation about housing policy is really a subset of the affordability topic. The candidates in the mayor's race agree that the long-term solution on housing affordability is just for more housing to be built so supply can catch up to demand. But there are differences in their approaches to the current high price of housing. Zoran Mamdani has said he will push to freeze rents on stabilized apartments. Andrew Cuomo has focused on expanding access to existing affordable housing. Curtis Sliwa wants policy changes to make better use of vacant apartments. We're going to get more perspective on this from Greg David. He's been looking into this in his role as a contributing writer at thecity.nyc. Good morning, Greg.
Happy Election Day.
Thank you. We're keeping track of all the polls, and we want to get a sense of how this issue ultimately will play out for whoever is elected mayor. I think it's safe to say that if the solutions on housing were easy, we would have had more of them in place by now.
That's true, but the one thing that we've really come far in New York is people agree that it's a supply issue. It wasn't that way a few years ago, and that's a major accomplishment. We have to build more housing. We have to build a lot more housing. The one thing I think the Adams administration has accomplished is open the door to that with their City of Yes rezoning, neighborhood rezonings. And on the ballot this day are three major charter reforms, which also would speed housing. That's to the good. But the key issue going forward and what's going to dominate the next year or two is Mamdani's pledge to freeze rents on rent-regulated apartments and what that will mean for them and for everyone else.
So you wrote an article about that, looking at the portion of apartments that are rent stabilized that Mamdani has at least some influence on if he's elected mayor, and then the portion of apartments that are market rate apartments, and how those two things interact with each other. Give me the gist of that article, please.
If there is a rent freeze on rent-regulated apartments, rents on unregulated apartments will go up more than they would have otherwise. The reasons are pretty simple. One, there are more market rate apartments than there are rent-regulated, 900,000 to about 1.1 million. Secondly, obviously, if one part of the market is frozen, the other part will bear the increase. And what you have to remember in particular is that many buildings have both rent stabilized and market rate apartments. Mamdani's own building is like that. It is about 50-50. So if costs are going up and you can't raise the rent on 50% of your apartments, what are you going to do? You're going to recover those cost increases on the market rate apartments. And so that's what's going to happen if the rent freeze goes through for 4 years.
I wanted to take a cross section of apartment rents across the country just to get some sense of where other cities are at when we talk about how unaffordable New York is. We're right there at the top of the list. San Francisco is not far behind us. You see some of the other East Coast cities like Boston there. Greg, we're never going to get to an $1,100 rent like in Buffalo or Houston. But is there some sense that we could, with more supply, get below a typical one-bedroom apartment price of $3,600?
So we're not going below, I'm sorry to say. And the reason for that is, New York is actually a rich city, and there are lots of people who can afford that. Our object here is to reduce the rate of increase, to slow apartment rents going up. And we can do that by building more supply. Of course, the one thing that would send rents plunging is a terrible recession in New York. And I don't think you want that. I don't think I want that. I don't think the next mayor wants that.
And as far as what the next mayor will do, there's obviously a huge lag time in actual housing construction. What's achievable in the short term?
Well, Adams has opened the door for a lot of construction in the near term with the City of Yes, et cetera. So that's good. Mamdani's great problem is he's pledged to build 200,000 affordable apartments with union labor, and all affordable housing these days is built non-union. He says he can do it for $500,000 a unit, but affordable apartments built by non-union labor are currently costing more than $500,000. So is this something that pencils out? You know, the great problem with Mamdani's proposals is, does the math work? And on housing, the math doesn't work.
Greg David at thecity.nyc, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. For more stories in your communities, click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV for the latest news and weather updates every 10 minutes and more. We'll see you then.